Welcome, Fright Night Vault listeners. You've opened the vault again, and the shadows are grateful. What waits for you tonight is not invention. It is the kind of story whispered in hushed voices, a warning dressed as a tale. If you stay with me, you'll carry something back into your own silence. Tonight's story, The House That Whispers Back, starts now. Claire did not believe in ghosts. She had made a life on reason. She worked in a city office, surrounded by concrete and neon, where the closest thing to mystery was a burned-out light bulb in a stairwell. When the letter arrived, she thought it was a mistake. Her uncle, a man she could barely picture from childhood, had left her a house. The deed was folded into the envelope, brittle with age. Alongside it was a single slip of paper. In shaky handwriting, just 4 words: "Never stay past midnight." Claire laughed at it then. She'd always thought of country folk as dramatic, but curiosity took hold, and within a week she was driving alone down a 2-lane road lined with crooked trees. The GPS lost its signal long before she found the driveway. The house sat hunched at the end of a dirt track. Its roof sagged in the middle, its windows smeared with grime. Boards covered the front porch as if trying to keep something in. Yet as Claire stood in the overgrown yard, she felt watched, as though the house itself had turned its face toward her. She shook it off. Dust, mold, and silence would be her only company, she told herself. But the townsfolk had said otherwise. At the gas station, the attendant had refused her money once she mentioned the address. "Don't go after dark," he muttered. At the diner, an old woman crossed herself and whispered, "They still walk there?" Claire set her jaw and unlocked the door. The air inside was colder than outside, though every window was shut. Wallpaper peeled in long curls, and every floorboard groaned under her weight. Still, there was nothing remarkable, nothing supernatural, just a ruin waiting for renovation. She explored the kitchen, the parlor, the winding staircase that led to bedrooms. Then, in the upstairs hall, she paused. The air shifted. It was subtle, like a draft from nowhere. And underneath the silence came something else. A sound so faint, she thought at first it was her imagination. A whisper. Words she couldn't quite catch, spoken just beyond her hearing from somewhere inside the walls. She called out, "Hello?" Silence answered. Yet as she turned away, she felt a pressure at her back, the prickling certainty that someone stood inches behind her in that darkened hall. When she spun around, nothing was there. Only peeling wallpaper and the door to her uncle's old study, half open, as if waiting for her to step inside. Claire pushed the study door open. Dust swirled in the beam of her phone's flashlight. A desk sat against the far wall, stacked with yellowed papers and leather-bound journals. The air was heavy, thick with mildew, and something sharper, metallic, almost like rust. She flipped through one of the journals. The writing was cramped and uneven, her uncle's words spilling across the page in frantic strokes. "They come at night. The voices first, then the footsteps. They are not echoes. They are watching." Page after page carried the same obsession, always circling back to one plea. "Do not stay past midnight." Claire's laughter felt hollow in her throat now. But she told herself her uncle had gone mad, perhaps trapped in isolation too long. She set the journal down and went back to the first floor, determined to ignore the words, scratching at her thoughts. That night, she unrolled her sleeping bag in the parlor. The house groaned around her, the wind pressing faintly at the boarded windows. She checked the time, 11:30. Her eyelids grew heavy. Then came the sound. At first, it was only a shuffle, faint footsteps on the floor above her. Claire froze, listening. Another shuffle, then the creak of weight pressing down on a bed frame. She held her breath. "Uncle," she whispered, absurd even as she said it. The footsteps stopped. Then, from the corner of the room, came a child's voice. A girl, soft and clear. "It's too late." Claire jerked upright, her light slicing across empty air. No one was there. but the words clung to her ears, so sharp they rang like an echo. The clock on her phone read 12:01. A chill ran across her body. The air seemed to tighten, pressing against her lungs. Upstairs, a door slammed. Then another. And then came a cry. A woman's scream, muffled as though it were trapped inside the walls. Claire staggered to her feet, heart hammering. "It's just the house settling," she muttered to herself, but her voice shook, and she didn't believe it. Her flashlight beam swept across the room and froze. In the parlor's cracked mirror, a figure stood behind her, pale, blurred, a face she couldn't make out, but with eyes that burned with sorrow. She spun around. No one. When she looked back, the mirror was empty. Claire's hands trembled as she backed toward the front door, reaching for the lock. But the air grew colder, and the whispering rose again. Dozens of voices, overlapping, surrounding her. "Stay. Don't leave. She's ours now." Claire yanked the door open. Cold night air rushed in, but as she stepped onto the porch, the whispering stopped. Silence returned. The house behind her slouched in moonlight, as if nothing had happened at all. But upstairs, in the broken window, a figure moved the curtain aside and watched her go. Claire should have left. She told herself that as she sat in her car, hands locked around the steering wheel, staring at the house in her rearview mirror. But something gnawed at her. The journals, the voice of the little girl, the glimpse in the mirror. She couldn't walk away without answers. The next night she returned. This time she brought candles, setting them on the parlor mantel. Their light painted the peeling wallpaper in trembling amber. Her phone read 11:45. The warning pressed on her mind. Never stay past midnight. She gritted her teeth. Just 1 hour. She would prove to herself that it was nothing. The house seemed to lean closer as the minutes ticked by. At 11:59, the air dropped to a freezing chill. The candles bent in an invisible draft. And then midnight came. The first sound was laughter, high, broken laughter that bounced across the walls. Footsteps thundered on the ceiling above, rushing back and forth. Claire's light darted across the parlor, catching shadows where no one stood. Then the air split open with screams, a man's roar, a woman's pleading, the desperate shrieks of children. Claire's heart seized. She was hearing it, the violence that had stained this house long ago. She stumbled toward the staircase and froze. On the landing above, a man appeared. His face was gray and sagging, his eyes pits of fury. In his hand glimmered a shadowed axe. Behind him, the figures of a woman and 2 children clung together, their mouths opening in endless screams. The man raised the axe, and as it fell, the house itself convulsed with the force of their deaths. The woman's head snapped sideways, the children were ripped away, and their screams became the same whispers Claire had heard all along. The ghosts froze. Slowly, every face turned toward her. Their mouths opened, but the words were not theirs. They spoke together, a chorus of hollow voices. "You are part of us now." Claire stumbled backward, but the floor shifted beneath her. The parlor mirror cracked, and from it spilled pale hands, reaching, grasping for her arms, her throat, her hair. The whispers rose into shrieks. She screamed, wrenching free, and bolted toward the door. But the man's figure was already there, blocking her way, axe dripping with black shadow. The woman appeared behind him, her face mangled, her eyes locked on Claire's. She whispered one word, not in hatred, but in warning. "Run." Claire slammed through the door and into the night. The spirits howled behind her, their voices stretching across the yard like the wail of a funeral dirge. The house seemed to pulse with light from within, shadows clawing at the windows as if furious she had slipped their grip. Claire didn't stop running until the house was only a silhouette swallowed by trees. Claire drove until her gas tank was nearly empty. She checked into a roadside motel, still shaking, her ears filled with phantom echoes. Sleep came only in fragments, shattered by the memory of those voices calling her name. She never returned to the house. The deed sat untouched in her desk drawer until she finally mailed it to a lawyer, instructing him to sell the property to anyone reckless enough to take it. But no buyer ever came forward. The house remained, crouched in silence, waiting. Claire tried to rebuild her life. Weeks passed, then months. She moved apartments, changed jobs, and avoided any mention of her uncle's legacy. Yet sometimes at night she would wake to the faint creak of floorboards just outside her bedroom door. She would lie frozen, listening to a whisper that was too soft to be real. When she turned on the light, the room was always empty. And when business eventually took her back along that country road, she couldn't resist. Against her better judgment, she slowed the car as she passed the dirt drive. The house was there, rotting deeper into itself, but in the upstairs window, a light burned, and for a moment, she thought she saw a child standing there, watching her car pass. She pressed the gas and never looked back, but some part of her knew it had already followed. If you enjoy these types of horror audio stories, just add a like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you have a story of your own, feel free to share it in the comments. You never know, the next story could be yours. If you made it this far, you're one of us. See you on the next video.